I'm excited about the topic of mindfulness and rational living because I think it's something that can really help us, reduce anxiety, depression, and improve our relationships. Um, so I'm excited to go over it. And I would like some participation. If you guys have something that you want to say, you can unmute your mic. And if you maybe have experienced something that we've talked about, or maybe you connect with something, yeah, feel free to talk about it. I might ask questions here and there just to maybe get you involved and maybe have somewhat of a discussion. But anyways, well, if why don't we just get started here? So mindfulness and rational living. Um, okay, let's see here. There we go. See if I can. Okay. So how to live mindfully and rationally. So living mindfully, is really living in the present, and it's focusing on those things that you can control, and then having rational thoughts. I don't know how many of you, spend time, with your thoughts, living in the past, or thinking about the past, or maybe you spend your time worrying about things in the future, and it can be hard, if we're either worrying about the future or thinking about things in the past, and what it does is it really causes us to miss out on the present, and also, in our lives there are things that we can't control, but there are things that we can control, and a lot of our anxieties come from focusing on the wrong things, those things that we can't control. And then the third thing is having rational thoughts. Our thoughts really do affect how we feel. And we'll, a little bit later on in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about this. But it's amazing, if we have a negative thought, it triggers a negative emotion, which leads to a negative behavior. But if we have those positive thoughts, we can have those positive feelings, where it's, triggering that serotonin or levels in our brains. And okay, let's see. So here I've got a little bit about, so we kind of talked about, as we live in the past, we tend to dwell upon, past disappointments. Could be expectations that weren't met, frustrations, and that's typically what causes a lot of depression, as dwelling upon things that in the past. And we tend to do a lot of that, and then living in the future can cause anxiety because first of all, we don't know what will happen in the future, and we can't completely control the future. And so because there's that unknown and we can't control it creates anxiety. And so for people that tend to live their lives in the future, we tend to feel anxious. And the harder we try and control our anxieties, sometimes the more anxious we get. We can't control the past or future, so we can only control the present. And so a lot of mindfulness is really, it's living in the present. It's focusing on the here and now, and focusing on those things that we have control in our lives, and really the present is really the one thing that we have control of, right? Those day-to-day things that we do in the present. And so as we're going through this presentation, I want you just to do some self-reflection and ask yourself, do you find yourself living more in the past or in the present, or I don't, and maybe you find yourself in the future. I know there was a time in my life where I wanted to help myself get better at this, and so I would go throughout my day. I would just check in with myself, and I'd ask myself, okay, where are you right now? Are you dwelling about the past? Are you worrying about something in the future? And then I would sort of shift my mind to be more present focused, whether that was at home or whether that might be at work. And it really did help me. And the more that I became more self-aware, and the more I was able to kind of make that shift of living in the present. And so there are some activities that we can do, some techniques that we can do to keep ourselves more in the present. Of course, breathing exercises. The goal of breathing exercise is to really be able to focus on our breath, really feel our body as we take in the air and then exhale. And that's a way to bring us to the present, to focus on that. And then we also have, expressing gratitude or having a gratitude journal. Um, when we when we express gratitude, it's something that helps us bring us in the present, right? Because generally, what's happening is it's those present things that we're feeling grateful about. And so another thing is, eating mindfully. There's a couple of different ways to eat mindfully. The way that I'm referring to is just to be in the present and focusing on the taste, the food that you're eating, being grateful, listening mindfully, when talking to other people, going for a walk, engaging your senses. We'll talk about this here a little bit more as we go on. First of all, we've got the deep breathing. And so a really simple exercise that you can do in the morning, you can do it at midday, at lunch, you can do it in the evening. But it's a really good exercise that can not only get you more in the present, but can also help calm you. And so another thing that you can do with the deep breathing is add an imagery with it. And so sometimes it's about doing your deep breathing. It could be 5 or 10 minutes that you focus on your breath, but then also, imaging something picturing something that brings you peace. Looking at, really focusing on the details of the scene, what you see, what you hear, is really helpful. And these are, I think, particularly helpful with when it comes to anxiety, is just these type of breathing and imagery can really help keep yourself grounded. And then when you add in focusing on something that is peaceful for you, can be really helpful. There's another kind, which is, eating a piece of candy. And this can be very helpful. Let's say that you're on a plane or something like that, and maybe that causes some anxiety for you. Putting a piece of candy in your mouth and just feeling the texture, feeling how it tastes, and just really concentrating on that moment can really keep you grounded and really help you to stay in the present. Realize you're in the present. And so I talk to a lot of people, before you get on a plane, if you're having some anxieties, pop a piece of candy in your mouth, chew some gum. And so I did get one comment saying that haven't been able to create images in your mind, and I do hear that from time to time, where some people have more difficulty creating an image in their mind. And I think that, and I don't know for sure, but it might be because, some people are more visual learners, some people are more auditory. And so for those people that might be more auditory, it might be easier to, in fact, I got another comment, music is good. So maybe if you're someone that isn't able to visualize, it might be the sound. So it could be meditating to music, and that may be more helpful to you than picturing someone. So great, thanks for that comment, and adding that music can really bring us in the present too. Let's see. And yes, if you would like, I can also figure out a way to share these slides with you too. It sounds like there might be some people that are wanting. Another present activity is, expressing gratitude. We talked a little bit about this, but just some ideas, it could be writing in a journal. Some people have a lot of fun by just having a gratitude jar where they may write something down, put it in the jar, and then maybe at the end of the week or every 2 weeks, open that up and kind of see what you're grateful for. thing about, writing a thank you note. Could be sending an email to somebody, volunteering, for things, having reminders. So sometimes around your office or might be at home where you just have reminders put up with things that you're grateful for. Those things can really keep you present, because generally, if sometimes we have a tendency to feel depressed, it's because we're generally thinking of, excuse me, unmet expectations, or we're thinking of things that maybe didn't go as planned, in the past, or we're worrying about what we're going to do at work tomorrow, or a vacation that's coming up. But when we're expressing gratitude, it's something that's generally happening in the moment. Not only that, gratitude does generally help us to feel happier, and so that's a good exercise to do in the present. Okay, so somebody had a question about, let's see, let me see if I can get to it here. How does mindfulness, being in the present, work when reflecting or processing, journaling? That's a great question. And so there's a way to be, journaling is some different things that we talk about. And as far as journaling goes, we're actually gonna, a little bit later on in the slides, we're gonna come up with a journaling that you can do that can keep you more present. A good journaling activity could be, what are 3 things that I did well today? And what's one thing that I would like to work on? And I always encourage you to be positive about things, because that always helps more than the negative things. So that's one way of journaling. These are 3 positive things that I did today or that went well today. This is one thing that I want to work on. Writing in your journal things that you were grateful for that day, something that you noticed. This can be really helpful too with a spouse. In a marriage, it could be every day writing one thing that you noticed that your spouse did for the day that you admired, or something you were grateful for. It's a good way to strengthen a marriage. And so when doing marriage therapy, I will encourage couples to have a journal, write down one thing that they were grateful for that day, or one thing that they admired about their spouse. And so those are some different ways that you can keep a journal more in the present. Let's see, a couple more comments I'm just looking through. Let's see. Okay, and so I'm going to get to another thing that really helps you stay in the present is
Hey, Corey.
doing some stretches.
Hey, Corey. Hey,
Oh
Corey.
yeah.
Did you see the question? I don't, if I missed it, I apologize. Someone says, so is gratitude like an antidote to a sense of powerlessness, or is there also a need to grieve when you have no control of it?
Okay, that's a good question. So is gratitude like an antidote to a sense of powerlessness? Um, that's a good question. When we don't feel like we're in power, there's a few different things that I would say to that. I would think one that the gratitude can help in that it invites, positive thinking or positive thoughts. That's how it can help. Sometimes if we feel powerless, it may be looking at what we can control, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But sometimes the things we can control might be as small as our thoughts, and whether we choose to take this negative thought and replace it with something more positive. And so that would be using mindfulness in a way, would be replacing a negative thought with a more positive thought. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But there are things that we can do behaviorally, to also have more control in our environment. Sometimes, communicating our need to feel more in control. Sometimes if we feel a lack of control, it's as we communicate that may open up doors for us, expressing that. Sometimes it can be doing what we can to change our environment, different things. And so that's a really good question. But a gratitude does invite more positive thinking, which does, increase those levels of being able to feel happier. Um, but yeah, that would be kind of a discussion itself as far as wanting to feel, more in control of a situation. Let's see, and let me see. I may have, I don't know if I've missed some more things here. Let's see if I can find a few different comments here. Let's see.
Most of them were comments. That was the only question so far.
Okay, that was the question. Thanks for helping me out with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thanks for that question. I appreciate it. And that may be something, one-on-one, I could also help out a little bit more if you did want to meet for sometimes for a therapy session, I can get a little bit more into that. Okay, eating mindfully. Eating slowly, without distraction, engaging your senses, noticing colors, smells, sounds, textures, notice the effects of food that have on our body, appreciating food. So it's another way of being mindful. This is a way of keeping ourselves in the present. There's another mindfulness of eating, which could be really get into, appreciating the foods that we eat, and focusing on how our body feels and those type of things. This type of mindfulness today is really about keeping yourself in the present. It's less about eating or what you eat. Let's see. Okay. So listening mindfully, this is something that can be so helpful in any relationship, whether it be in a marriage or whether it be with someone at work. But just listening and really being present with somebody in the moment, and taking the time to really absorb the message, and helping the other person feel respected. And a lot of times when our minds are wandering, I think what I've noticed, I guess, with me is it can be when I'm having a conversation with somebody. It may be that I'm worrying about what I have to do in an hour from now, or I'm worried about something that happened the other day, or something like that. But as we will really pull ourselves into the present, and be fully present when we're talking to people, it not only helps communication, but it also helps better the relationship we have with people. And so that's something that, in any relationship, that it's just one tool that we can do to better our relationship with others, but also to help our communication, and I think reduce our stress levels in relationship as well. Let's see here. Looks like we've got a few more comments. Just looking through them real quick. Okay. Yeah, some really good comments. So somebody said, for me, focusing on being grateful opens my heart and quiets the mind. I think that's wonderful. Walking meditation, being outdoors in nature is something that can really help you to bring yourself into the present. As you're walking, it's doing things to really keep your senses of focusing on the sights that you're seeing. It could be what are you hearing, what are you smelling, but just really letting your senses explore your surroundings and allowing you to fully be present and enjoy what's around you. We can also do this at work. We can do this at our homes, where it's just really focusing on the things around us, and really keeping ourselves present. But there's nothing like the outdoors. There's nature just has a way of, I think, of being able to heal and also rejuvenate and refresh us. And so I think that any time of we can be outdoors, go for a walk and meditate, I think is always very helpful. Okay, so we kind of got through the mindfulness, living in the present. I can't tell you how much that can help you if you can keep your life in the present. The next thing to do is to focus on those things that you have control of. anxiety really comes from trying to control things that we can't control. And most of those things are in the future, it's worrying about, I've got this thing I've got to do tomorrow, or, is this going to turn out okay, and, but a lot of times if we pull ourselves into the present and we think, okay, so what can I do right now? What do I have control of right now of this thing I'm worried about? So let's just say that, maybe we're worried about a school assignment that we need to turn in. There's this assignment that's due in 6 weeks, and we worry and we worry and we wonder if we're going to get it done or get a good grade. And all of that energy is sort of being focused on something we can't control, right? And we only have so much energy. So instead, if you can take your energy and focus on what you have control of, well, that might be I guess I can control picking up my book and studying it right now. I could control asking questions or emailing my teacher. I can control maybe taking a little bit more time on this section. So those are things that you can control in the present. But worrying about the grade you might get is a little bit out of your control, right? Because the teacher's the one that's going to give you that grade, and so you can't really control that, but you can control doing the homework, asking the questions, showing up to class. So those are some ways that you can focus on what you have control of and still be in the present. So these are just some quick things that I've written down that we can possibly control, right? So we can control the thoughts that we have. If we have a negative thought, we can choose if we want to replace a more positive thought there. We have some control over our productivity level, how much effort we might put into something, or how much time we spend doing something. We can control the thoughts that we have about ourselves, work ethic. Sometimes we can control our schedule, when we do certain things, how we treat others, our meals, level of honesty with ourselves and others, structure. And so, yeah, I mean, just a general question, but how often do you guys worry about things that you don't have control over? And so I just had a question here. How can I teach a child, student to switch to those thoughts? That's a good question. If you're a teacher or you're a parent, and you have a student or son or daughter that struggles with anxiety, it's generally because they're focused on outcomes rather than tasks. They're struggled on, what if I don't do well on this test, or what if I get a bad grade on this assignment, or what if I don't do well on this presentation? What they're doing is they're projecting into the future when it's not here yet. And so it's really being able to help that student or child think about, well, right now, let's write down maybe a list of things that you have control of that can help you with that, and it may be well, I can practice my presentation. That's something I have control of. Or, for a child, it might be children have different fears and things like that. And sometimes it might be just writing down on a piece of paper, some different things that they can control in the present, or things they can do, well, right now you can focus on, making your bed, or, you can focus on, doing this or that. Let's see. And so as far as being able to teach, students and things like that, it really is something that has to be practiced in, as we talk about mindfulness, focusing on things you can't control. It's like anything else, it takes practice, and we don't really get good at it until we practice. And so sometimes it may be just doing very, very simple steps, the first step might be just, talking to a child or student about, let's focus on this task right now. I know you're worried about this, but let's just focus on this specific task. We can control tasks, but we can't control outcomes. And so maybe just making it very simple, can help that way. We'll get a little bit more into that here. Let's see. So that's what I've got here, is focus on tasks rather than outcomes. And so that's what we've talked a little bit about. Another question, let's see. Question about 11-year-old choice. Okay, so asking them, okay, you've got two choices. Do you want to panic about what you could do, or do you want to figure this out, or what you can do right now? And I think that's good. Sometimes, if we have, especially with panic, is maybe helping a child take some deep breaths, slowing their heart rate down, and then together, let's find out what task you can start working on. Let's figure out a task right now that we can work on. So we can't always control outcomes. Like an outcome would be winning the soccer game. Well, that's a little bit out of our control, right? Because we have all of these other teammates that have to do their job, and they have to do it well, or else we might not win. And so we also have another team that might be better than us. And so it's a little bit out of our control if we win a game, because we also depend upon our teammates and how good the other team is. Getting an A on a test is somewhat out of our control, and I say that because the teacher is the one that grades the test, and so there's a little bit of discretion there of whether or not we get that A. That person liking me, we might want someone to like us, but actually it's up to that person, right? So we can get pretty stressed out and nervous. We might go on a date, or we might meet someone for lunch, and we're so anxious, and it's because we really can't control whether or not they like us. That's up to them. And so in a little bit, we'll talk about what we can control. It could be getting a job. Let's say we have an interview. Well, it's not totally in our control if we get that job, because or there may be other applicants that may have more experience, and so part of that is out of our control. So if we focus on what we can control about winning a soccer game, these are things we can control, right? Going to practice, working hard, spending extra time practicing, eating healthy, listening to your coach. And so these are tasks. If a soccer player uh, focuses on these things, they're not going to have so much anxiety because they have control over this, right? And so it's better to focus on these things because we can control. Getting an A on a test, well, maybe we focus on taking good notes. We have control over that. Reading the textbook, asking questions, spending time studying. Those are things that we have control of, and so that's going to reduce our anxiety. Whether that person likes me or not, well, talking to them, spending time with them, communicating well with them, helping them, those are some things that we have control of. And so, yeah, I don't know if you guys ever worry about these kind of things, and to the point where you start feeling anxious, and am I going to win? Are we going to win the game? Am I going to do well on the test? Is this person going to like me? If you'll start focusing on tasks rather than outcomes, you'll find that your anxiety will be reduced. And it's because you can control tasks, and you're also living in the present, right? Because whether we get an A on that test, that's in the future, and we don't know. And so the present is I'm studying for it. I can control these different tasks. The third piece here is I want to talk about having rational thoughts, so living rationally. And the way that I talk about this is to rationally counsel ourselves, and this is a skill that we can learn. We can learn to rationally counsel ourselves so that you can have rational thoughts. And I'm just going to teach you a little bit about how to do that. Okay, so this is my definition of what a rational thought is. Rational thought defined: the thought helps you feel the way you want to feel. The thought helps you reach your goals, and the thought is factual. And so I always say, what good does it do to have a thought if it doesn't help you to feel the way you want to feel? So if you have this thought and it's causing you to feel anxious, it's causing you to feel depressed, then what good is that thought doing you? And so let's find another thought. What good is that thought if it's not helping you reach your goals? And so let's say you're going to school, you've got a goal to, you know, get through this class. What good is it to stress and worry about getting a specific grade when maybe there's things that are out of your control, you know? Is the thought factual? And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we can have, you know, cognitive distortions. And so part of this rational self-counseling is to verify, like, is this thought rational? Is there a better thought that I can think that's more rational than the one I have right now? Let's see. Okay, so this is just our triangle, the cognitive triangle. And so you know, this is what we do with cognitive behavioral therapy is whatever thought we have affects how we feel, and how we feel affects our behavior, right? It's so amazing. So generally what happens is some event will happen, and then we'll interpret that event somehow. And the interesting thing is we can all interpret the event differently, right? The way I have an example that I always give with this is, let's just say that you have two people driving down the road, and let's say this same car cuts in front of both of these cars, cuts them off. Same thing happens to them. So you got the one person who gets cut off, and he thinks, wow, what a jerk. That person is trying to run me off the road. I'm so upset, you know. And the next thing they do is they try and speed up, you know, and it's a little bit like road rage. Well, you have this other person, same thing happened to him, right? The car cut him off. But the thought, or the way they interpreted that is they must be in a hurry. They must have some sort of emergency. I'm going to just slow down a little bit so they can get past. That's how I explain how same event happened, two different people, but the way that they interpret it was different. The thought they had was different. And so one person felt angry, had a little bit of road rage. The other person felt calm and slowed their car down. And so we have to be able to rationally counsel ourselves so that we can go through life having rational thoughts, so that we can feel good and have good behaviors, right? So we want to have feelings that are going to help us feel the way we want, and we want to have feelings that are going to help us reach our goals, and we want it to be factual. Okay, so this is just an example here of some rational self-counseling. So let's just say we have this situation. I made a mistake, right? I'm going to get fired. That could be an irrational thought. Well, this thought isn't going to help me feel well, right? It's certainly not going to help me reach my goal. And it might be not really rational, you know. And so a more rational thought we could tell ourselves is, I've made mistakes before, and my supervisor was supportive. And so it's helping to get a more rational thought. My girlfriend broke up with me. I can't go on. This will be the end of me. A better thought is this is hard, but I know I will get through it. I will find someone, you know, I will find someone better for me. So right here, these are cognitive distortions that we can all have. And I'm just going to talk just kind of briefly about some of these cognitive distortions. So all or nothing thinking, essentially having thinking that is, you know, if I don't do this, if I don't get 100%, then I failed. Or if I make one mistake, that means I'm lousy, you know. Or if that person doesn't like me, it means I must not be a good friend. You know, it's that all or nothing thinking. And you know, the better thought is yeah, that yes, that one person might not want to do something with me, but you know, there are other people that do, and I am a likable person, right? Overgeneralizing, you know, it could be one particular thing happens to us. Let's just say that maybe we made a mistake, you know, we were playing in a piano in a recital or something. We play a note wrong, and so we generalize that to all the rest of our parts of our lives. Like, well, if I made a mistake there, I'm going to make a mistake in all the rest of the areas of my life. I must not be any good, you know. But it is possible to make a mistake in this area, but not make a mistake in other parts of our lives. Mental filters. There are some people that only see the negative in every situation, and sometimes they only see the negative in their self. And so what we do is a more rational thought is, well, wait a second, let's take a look at some of these positive qualities. Let's take a look at some of your successes rather than only focus on the negative. Discounting the facts, maybe we've distorted something a little bit to where it's not factual, and we have to think about it. I kind of call it the camera check. If a camera was showing us what happened and we watched that, what would be the facts? And that helps us to challenge our thoughts and think, okay, is this thought really factual that I'm thinking? Jumping to conclusions is really big for people that have anxiety, because that's mostly what we do when we have anxiety is we're making a guesses or assumptions about what we think is going to happen. And a lot of times our mind is sort of creating this fictitious fear. And even though it hasn't happened, our body starts responding and reacting as if it has happened, because we're sort of in our mind, it's playing out that this bad thing has happened. And so pulling yourself back into the present can be very helpful, and then focusing on what you have control of, and then really being mindful and focusing on the here and now can be helpful. Mind reading, that's another one for anxiety is that we feel like we know what other people are thinking, even though we don't, right? Let's say that we're in a social situation. How many times we walk away thinking, I know that everybody in that group is thinking this about me. I spilled something on me. I know that my friends are all thinking that, and kind of have to pull back and think, well, wait a second, we really don't know, right? What are the facts? Well, the facts are nobody really said anything. So really, I don't know what they're thinking, right? And so we kind of pull ourselves back from that. Fortune telling, another good one for anxiety, is basically fortune telling is I know that's not going to turn out. I know this is going to go bad. I know things won't work out. It's predicting something, and usually in a negative or bad way. Magnification is generally, something small might happen, but we blow it up and make it way bigger than it needs to be. Or maybe we minimize our own efforts. Let's say that we spent hours working on something, and deep down inside we really wanted to be noticed and recognized, but yet we minimize it and we say, it was nothing. Yeah, it was nothing. I worked on it for a little bit, but really we may have spent a lot of time on something. And so some people minimize the good things that they do, or they minimize their strengths and maximize their weaknesses, and that gets people in feeling depressed and anxious. Emotional reasoning is sometimes we'll think, well, just because I'm feeling this way, that must mean that it really is how it is. So I mean, just for an example, let's say that maybe we gave a presentation or something, and we have this like gut feeling that it didn't go well, but then somebody else tells us later, well, that really did go well. But we think just because we have that gut feeling that it must be right, that it really was lousy. And so just because we're feeling something, that doesn't always mean that it's accurate. And so sometimes we have to think, well, wait a second, I've got this sort of knot in my stomach. But what are the facts? Well, the facts is no one's really said anything to me, so I can only assume that things are okay. So sometimes just because we have a knot in our stomach doesn't mean that we really have to follow or believe that. Sometimes because of negative thoughts, it can cause anxiety, unnecessary anxiety, and unnecessary emotional stress. Should statements are very what I like to call very kind of shaming. If sometimes if when we sort of guilt ourselves or shame others when we say to ourselves, I should have done this or should have done that. Well, a word that's better to say is, rather than should, if I always tell myself to say, I would have liked to have done that, or it would have been helpful had I done that. It's better of saying should, because should implies self-blame. Or if we say should to others, it implies kind of shame, right? You should have done this, you should have done that. That was, but instead we can say, I kind of would have appreciated had you done this, or maybe you could think about doing this. It's just a little bit better of getting away from should. So if you're, especially in relationships and couples, uh, that's one thing that we can fall into is the should, you should have done this or that. Instead, if we can talk about what we need is, this is something that I need or I would like, a little bit easier. Labeling is one of those where we tend to throw a blanket label on ourselves or someone else that's really not accurate. Like, we might label something as, what's a good label? We could label something as someone is a bad parent. Let's say that we, a parent had a bad day and they maybe they got after their child and that's the only thing that we saw. And so we label them as a bad parent, and so what we're doing is we're taking maybe an isolated incident and we're sort of just labeling someone. And the thing I don't like about labels is we're never all just one thing, right? I mean, sometimes we may, have a bad day or something. That doesn't mean we're always that way. And then another one that can get us in trouble is the self-blame, where we blame ourselves or we blame others. We blame ourselves for things that maybe we don't have complete control of. For example, maybe we have a child that does something and we blame ourselves as being a bad parent, and that's not healthy. Or maybe we blame our child for all of this stuff that maybe they don't have control of. A better way to think about this is, rather than blaming ourselves or others, it's better to look at taking, how can we be responsible for something, or how can we maybe take more responsibility. But blame never helps us, it never helps anyone else, right? And so that can be very toxic. And so we can find ways to, in a better way, help ourselves. Let's see. Yeah, someone had a really good thing here. It talks about a scripture, looking to be in every thought, doubt not, fear not. So that's something that's been helping you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Okay, so I kind of want to help you just to think about how to rationally counsel yourself. We've kind of talked about some of these cognitive distortions, and I want you to think a little bit about how you might rationally counsel yourself. So I texted my friend and they never texted me back. So the irrational thought is, no one likes me. I don't know what is wrong with me. So I can see a few things there, right? All or nothing thinking, magnification. I didn't get this text, so wow, I'm this great awful person. Or uh, personal blame. I'm blaming myself for doing something when I don't even know. It could be I'm mind reading. I'm assuming that they don't like me. So there's all kind of distortions, right? And so as we're rationally counting ourselves, what might be a better thought? What could be something like, wow, they must be really busy, or maybe they didn't see the text, or I sure like it when people respond to me quickly, but maybe they don't respond quickly, and that's okay. Maybe that's how they are. And so the idea is to have a thought that's going to help us feel better, help us reach our goals, and a thought that's factual, right? We have no idea that this person doesn't like us, so it can't be factual. So maybe we ask them more questions that might help us. Hey, I hit the wrong note playing in the orchestra concert. I can't do anything right when I get in front of people. Well, that's a little bit of generalization, right? Because just because we make a mistake in this one area, that doesn't mean that we're going to make mistakes in every other area. It's a little bit of magnification, and so there's just some different things that we can look at that. And so what I want you to do is, as you go throughout your day, maybe at the end of the day, I just want you to write 3 boxes. This is the situation that happened. This was the negative thought I had. And then I want you to replace it with a more productive thought, a better thought that's going to help you. And as you do that, it'll help you move through your negative thinking so that you can avoid depression, avoid anxiety, and those type of negative thoughts. So today, just kind of in a summary, quick summary, we talked about being mindful and living in the present. We've talked about some different ways of being mindful. It could be doing some deep breathing, could be sucking on a piece of candy. We can only control the present, so we need to live in the present. We also talked about focusing on those things that we have control. It's a lot of wasted energy if we're focusing on things that we can't control, especially the future. We can't control that. So make a little list of those things you can control in the present. And the last thing we talked about is rationally counseling ourselves so that we can avoid thoughts that are going to cause depression and anxiety. We do that by looking at our negative thought and then replacing it with a more productive thought. So just some references here. And so I just want to thank you all for attending. Enjoyed having you here, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to some of your comments. I'm not the best at catching all of those comments, so I apologize, but I do appreciate having you guys here, and thanks. Looks like someone is clapping, so I appreciate that. And so I hope from this presentation that you can live a more mindful and rational life with less depression and anxiety, and have better relationships as you stay present and have rational thoughts in those relationships. All right, well, I'll see you guys later.
Bye, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you.